If you asked anyone in my neighborhood, they'd probably say I have the perfect life. My wife, Lena, and I bought a house here 3 years ago. Charming little two-story with a white fence and a neat garden she insisted on planting. We joined the block parties, waved to the mailman, baked cookies for new neighbors, all of it. People always complimented us on how cute we were together. And honestly, I believed it too, at least at first. Every weekend felt like some commercial for suburban bliss. Barbecues with neighbors, movie nights in the living room, even quiet evenings where we'd sit on the porch swing and sip wine. I thought I had everything locked down. A steady job, a loving wife, a friendly neighborhood. But here's the thing about picture-perfect lives. Sometimes the frame hides the cracks. It started small, almost unnoticeable. Lena began staying up later than usual, claiming she was catching up on work emails or couldn't sleep. I'd head to bed around midnight, but I'd hear the faint creak of the back door sometime later. At first, I thought it was my imagination, or maybe she was just letting the cat out. But then there were the smiles. Not at me, not the way she used to. When our neighbor, Mark, waved hello or cracked a joke, she lit up in a way that felt different, too familiar, like there was a secret between them I wasn't in on. I brushed it off at first, told myself I was paranoid, that I was just tired from work. But the seed was planted, and once doubt takes root, it doesn't stop growing. Once I noticed the little things, I couldn't unsee them. Mark, our neighbor, started showing up at odd times. Not just when he was mowing his lawn or grabbing the mail, but late in the evenings, right when Lena was going for a quick walk. I'd catch glimpses through the blinds. A shadow lingering by our fence, her silhouette slipping out the back gate. During neighborhood gatherings, their conversations always seemed clipped, like they were trying too hard not to stand too close. She'd laugh at his dumb jokes, the kind she usually rolled her eyes at when I told them. And when I'd walk up, both of them would stiffen for a beat, before plastering on those friendly neighbor smiles. It wasn't enough to accuse her. Not yet. But the pattern was there, and every night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the whole neighborhood saw it too. Our houses are close. So close that when it's quiet, you can hear muffled voices through the walls if someone's in their driveway or backyard late at night. One night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to what I thought was Lena whispering. I slipped out of bed, careful not to make a sound, and pressed my ear to the open window. The voices weren't inside. They were just beyond the fence. I heard her laugh, that soft, playful laugh she hadn't used with me in months. And then Mark's low voice, saying something I couldn't fully catch, except for the words, "He has no idea." My stomach dropped. I froze, every muscle in my body tight, as I heard Lena shush him, then the sound of hurried footsteps on gravel. By the time I peeked out, the yard was empty. The gate to our fence swung gently, like someone had just slipped through. That was the moment I knew this wasn't paranoia anymore. Something real was happening. A week later, I decided to stop second-guessing myself and just watch. I pretended to go to bed early, left the lights off, and waited. Sure enough, around 12:30, Lena quietly slipped out of bed. I heard the faint creak of the floorboards, the careful turn of the back door handle. I crept to the hallway window, my heart hammering in my chest. And there she was, hoodie pulled over her head, phone clutched in her hand, moving fast toward the back gate. She didn't see me. She didn't even hesitate. Just opened the gate and disappeared into the night, in the direction of Mark's house. I stood there in the dark, fists clenched, torn between running after her and staying put. In that moment, part of me hoped I was wrong, that maybe she was just walking off stress or meeting a friend. But deep down, I already knew. And the worst part? If I could see it this clearly, who else in the neighborhood had noticed before me? It didn't take long before I started catching the looks. You know the kind, neighbors pausing mid-conversation when I walked by, fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. One afternoon, while mowing the lawn, I overheard two of the women from down the street talking near the sidewalk. They didn't realize how well sound carries over the buzz of a mower that's just been shut off. Poor guy, he probably has no clue. I heard she sneaks over to Mark's after dark. My sister saw them once. said they were practically glued together. They went quiet when they noticed me standing there, gripping the mower handle so tight my knuckles went white. That was the gut punch. Realizing I wasn't just suspicious. I was the last to know. My so-called perfect life had turned into neighborhood entertainment. That night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. When Lena came home from working late, I was waiting at the kitchen table. No TV on, no lights except the overhead lamp. Just me, sitting there with every ounce of anger and humiliation boiling under my skin. "Where were you?" I asked, my voice steady but low. She froze, keys still in her hand. "I told you, work." I shook my head. "Don't lie. I've seen you sneaking out. I've heard you with him. Everyone in this neighborhood seems to know Lena. Everyone but me." For a split second, her face went pale. But then she slipped into that perfect, polished act she always wore in public. Her voice turned sharp, indignant. "Are you seriously accusing me? Do you realize how paranoid you sound? Mark is just a neighbor. God, you're embarrassing yourself." Embarrassing myself. That word hit harder than anything else. Because she knew that was exactly what I felt every time I caught the whispers, every time I noticed the pitying stares. And even confronted, she still looked me in the eye and denied it. I couldn't stomach the lies anymore. So the next evening I walked straight over to Mark's house. No warning, no text, just 3 hard knocks on his door. When he opened it, he had that smug half-smile plastered on his face, like he already knew why I was there. "We need to talk," I said, pushing past the pleasantries. "What the hell is going on between you and my wife?" For a second, he looked caught off guard. Then he chuckled, like this was some kind of joke. "Man, you've got it all wrong. Lena's just friendly. You're overthinking." But I'd heard enough. "Cut the crap. I heard you two the other night. I've seen her sneaking into your yard. Don't insult me by pretending nothing's happening." His smile faltered, but only for a moment. "Look, maybe she needs someone to talk to. Maybe you're not giving her what she needs. That's not my fault." The audacity of it, him standing there, acting like he was doing me a favor, nearly made me lose it right there on his porch. And the worst part? I realized he wasn't worried. Not about me, not about Lena. He knew she'd cover for him, and he knew the neighborhood would keep whispering behind my back. When I came back from Mark's, Lena was waiting, arms crossed, like she already knew where I'd been. "So now you're harassing the neighbors?" she snapped before I even shut the door. I told her exactly what he'd said, that maybe I wasn't giving her what she needs. I expected her to deny it, to get furious at him. But instead, she sighed, like I was some stubborn child. "You twist everything. Mark's just supportive. He listens. You've been distant, you've been stressed, and I needed someone to lean on. It's not what you think." Classic Lena, twisting it around until I was the problem. She even tried sprinkling in a few tears, saying she was confused and lonely, acting as if sneaking out at 1 a.m. was normal marriage behavior. The two-faced act was in full swing. To the world, she was the sweet, smiling wife with the perfect marriage. Behind closed doors, she was cold, dismissive, and ready with 1,000 excuses for why her betrayal was somehow my fault. And I hated that part of me, almost wanted to believe her. The next block party was unbearable. I tried to act normal, keep my composure, but the sideways glances and half-smiles cut deeper than any words could. Neighbors whispered as I passed. I caught bits here and there. "Did you see Lena with Mark again? Poor guy, he still doesn't know? So sad. Really, such a nice guy." I felt like I was living in a nightmare where everyone else had the script and I was only discovering my lines halfway through. I smiled when people looked at me, waved when they waved, but inside I was boiling. Even the children's laughter in the yard sounded bitter. I realized how isolating betrayal could be, not just emotionally but socially. People had seen the cracks before I had, and suddenly my perfect life felt like a spectacle. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, humiliated, and furious. I couldn't even look at Lena without seeing the full picture of deception staring back at me. That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Every polite smile, Every whispered gossip, every lie Lena had spun in the last few weeks boiled into a single, raging storm inside me. I confronted her in the living room, the way only someone pushed past their breaking point can. "I know everything," I shouted. "I've seen you sneak out. I've heard you with him. I've overheard the neighborhood talking about you, about us." "Enough, Lena." For a moment, she actually looked stunned. Then, like always, her mask snapped back into place. "I can't believe you're overreacting. You're paranoid. You're embarrassing yourself." And there it was again, her ability to twist the situation so I felt like the villain. I realized that if I stayed silent any longer, I'd be complicit in my own humiliation. I stormed out of the room, needing air, needing space to think. My marriage, my home, and my life, the things I thought were safe, had turned against me in ways I hadn't even imagined. I spent the next few days in a fog. I couldn't focus at work, I couldn't sleep, and every time I saw Lena, I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. The thought of staying in the same house, in the same neighborhood, felt unbearable. I had to make a choice. Could I forgive her? Could I rebuild trust with someone who had perfected the art of two-faced deception? Every scenario I imagined ended the same way. Me questioning everything, lying awake, wondering if she was sneaking out again. And then there was the neighborhood. The pitying glances, the gossip, the sense that I had become a character in everyone else's story. No matter what I did, staying meant living under a microscope. So I made the hardest decision of all. I wouldn't confront her with a dramatic scene in public, and I wouldn't beg her to stay. I would reclaim my life first, move out, separate my space, and figure out the rest later. My pride, my sanity, and my dignity came first. It was terrifying, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control. Packing my things felt surreal. Every shirt, every book, every little piece of our life I'd shared with Lena now felt like evidence of a story I no longer wanted to be part of. I moved quietly, trying not to make a scene, though part of me wanted her to notice, to see the consequences of her choices. The drive to the new apartment was silent, except for the hum of the tires on the road. I didn't call her, I didn't look back. The neighborhood faded behind me, leaving only the weight of betrayal and the sting of embarrassment. That first night in my new place, I sat on the edge of the bed and just breathed. No gossip, no whispers, no sideways glances. For the first time in weeks, it was just me. It wasn't perfect. Nothing could erase what had happened, but it was mine. And slowly, that was enough to start thinking clearly about the next steps, about how to protect myself from the same pain again. In the quiet of my new apartment, I finally let myself think. About Lena, about Mark, about the neighborhood, and about myself. I realized how easily appearances can deceive. The smiling, perfect wife everyone envied was a stranger behind closed doors. The life I thought was secure was fragile, held together by illusions. And worst of all, I had been blind until the signs were too loud to ignore. But there was also clarity. I learned the hard way that trust isn't given blindly, that pride and dignity matter, and that sometimes stepping away is the only way to protect yourself. I had been humiliated, yes, but I hadn't lost myself entirely. Not yet. It was painful and it was messy, but it was also freeing. And for the first time in a long while, I could see a future that wasn't dictated by someone else's lies. Weeks passed, and the sharp edges of betrayal dulled into a steady ache. I kept busy, work, friends, little routines that reminded me I still had control over my life. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive Lena, or if I even wanted to. What mattered was that I wasn't living under her shadow anymore. I ran into a few neighbors by chance. Some avoided eye contact, some offered awkward smiles. But their whispers no longer reached me. I had stepped out of their narrative and reclaimed my own. The lesson was brutal but clear. Appearances lie. Charm, smiles, perfection. None of it guarantees honesty or loyalty. Trust is earned, not assumed, and sometimes the hardest part of love is knowing when to walk away. I don't know what the future holds for Lena, or if I'll ever cross paths with Mark again. What I do know is that I survived, I learned, and I'm slowly building a life where I can trust my own eyes, my own instincts, and my own heart again. And for now, that has to be enough.